We begin with NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale, USA Today's Washington bureau chief Susan Page, and Washington Post national editor Phil Rucker. So, Gabe, how is the president preparing? How is the White House gearing up for this high-stakes news conference, as well as Monday's one-on-one exchange with NBC News nightly news anchor Lester Holt?
Hi there, Andrew. Good afternoon. Well, White House aides say that the president is preparing for this solo news conference this afternoon like he does for other solo news conferences. But we should point out this is his first of the year. It was 8 months ago since he held a solo news conference. Typically, for the last several months, he's held a few news conferences with world leaders, but they tend to be those types of conferences where he takes 2 questions from domestic reporters and then 2 questions from international reporters. This news conference is expected to go much longer. Now, this also comes, Andrew, as there's so much attention on this unscripted event, and that is something that the White House and the campaign says that it plans to do more of. You mentioned the interview on Monday with our colleague Lester Holt. As we've been reporting, a lot of lawmakers on Capitol Hill will be looking to these events to be able to tell, how the president is doing, whether he is up to the job. Now, the White House is trying to focus on substance here. We just heard from National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan a few moments ago talking about how the NATO summit is going and hearing that, at least according to the National Security Advisor, there's been a lot of praise for President Biden and everything that he is doing right now for Ukraine. The president trying to focus on preserving global alliances. One more thing we've just learned, Andrea, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden will not be at the solo press conference this afternoon. She will be hosting world leaders at Camp David, the spouses of world leaders at Camp David. So certainly the White House is trying to manage a balancing act here, while knowing that they have to get the president in front of a lot of eyes this afternoon and over the next couple of days. They are trying to maintain that he does have a day job, and he is trying to focus on this NATO summit, Andrea.
And Ali Vitale, talk to us about the congressional Democrats refusing to take yes for an answer from the president. The president said he's decided, starting with Nancy Pelosi's extraordinary comments on Morning Joe the other day. Yeah. They're indicating that they're not accepting that they still are sounding off. And a lot of them are not happy, more than have announced that.
I think that's definitely true. It's long been the case here, Andrea, that more members are unhappy, panicked, concerned than are willing to say so publicly. That being said, I've been told by several members here that they do expect more of their colleagues on the House side to come forward and either voice those concerns about Biden's electability or outright call for him to step down as the party's nominee. Most recently, we heard from the Congresswoman who was just elected, a freshman from Michigan's 3rd District, Congresswoman Hillary Scholten, effectively saying, pass the torch. That's an argument that you and I will remember was made by younger members of the Democratic Party against Biden during the 2020 primaries, specifically several House members saying that then it was time for Biden to pass the torch. That argument now clearly being revived by some on the House Democratic ranks. You're right that we'll hear from the top Democrat, Hakeem Jeffries, just in the next half hour or so. He's been steadfast in saying that he's supporting the president, but he's also been clear, and this is the way that he has handled running this caucus since he took the helm from Nancy Pelosi. He really is letting members air their grievances, share their concerns. He's told members that he plans to relay those to the president. There's no set time frame on when that conversation might happen. But look, on the Senate side of this building, one of the key things that we'd been waiting for is if any Democratic senator would go so far as to say that Biden should step down as the nominee. I talked to Vermont Senator Peter Welch just in the last hour. He said he gave the White House a heads up, or at least his staff did, before he released his statement saying that he didn't think Biden should be the nominee any longer. And what he said was clear. His opinion was formed in the moment where he says this is a point where the White House should be showing, not telling, but they are going to be telling his fellow Senate Democrats. Top members of the campaign meeting just a few blocks from the Capitol, trying to share their strategy going forward. Welch, even as he says Biden shouldn't be the nominee, told me he's still going to that meeting, Andrea.
Susan, from all your years covering presidents and news conferences, this is among the fewest that we've seen. The last solo press conference lasted only about 20 minutes. It was after a Xi meeting. Usually that's a joint press conference, but I'm presuming that President Xi did not submit to press questions from the press. But that's a pretty bad contrast. Ronald Reagan had fewer. He had none that I recall in his re-election year of 1984, from the day he announced to the day he was elected. But that's hardly a good example at this point.
You know, this has been the subject of some considerable criticism of President Biden and his White House, that he has done so few news conferences and so few interviews with mainstream reporters. And the question has been, is just a standard protection that he can make a gaffe, or it's not the message they want? Or have they been shielding him from letting reporters and Americans see a decline in his mental acuity? That is the question that reporters have. And, you know, I think the first question we're going to hear at this news conference, or maybe the second, is Nancy Pelosi says it's time for you to make a decision. You say you've already made a decision. Any possibility you will reconsider whether to run again? Because that is where the debate is now focused, Andrea.
And Phil, there's been so much reporting in print. The Washington Post had speculation. Some Democrats are holding off judgment until after the NATO summit. I've been told that as well. There's also reporting in the Post that there were some dissent among labor leaders, despite the unanimous AFL-CIO endorsement. And I think Jackie Alemany reported on Morning Joe today that there were even some people disagreeing in the Congressional Black Caucus with that very quick endorsement from the CBC.
Yeah, Andrea, my colleagues at the Post are reporting that there's considerable dissent, both within labor leadership, which is, of course, a key Democratic constituency to turn out the vote, especially in those battleground states like Michigan and Pennsylvania that Biden's going to need to win re-election. But a lot of dissent on Capitol Hill, both among House Democrats and among Senate Democrats. There's a lot more anxiety and concern than we are able to see publicly right now. You know, these politicians are thinking about their own political futures as well as the president's political future, and they're getting internal polling data that shows a real collapse in Biden's support in a number of critical battleground states. That's according to my colleagues reporting. And the expectation among Democratic leaders is that beginning Friday, tomorrow, after the NATO summit ends, we could see an increase in the number of public defections. That is, Democratic leaders actually calling for Biden to step down as the nominee. Of course, his performance at tonight's news conference is going to be a key indicator. I think if he has a bad performance at that news conference, you may even see more concern, more defections tomorrow. But out of respect for him as the leader of the United States at a time when he's hosting all of these foreign leaders in Washington, you know, some leaders are holding their comments privately for now, but we could see a public wave starting tomorrow.
And, you know, of course, one of the downsides of all of this is for them, those who want a change, is that they don't know what that change would mean or, you know, who it would be. Would it be Kamala? This could open up a whole other set of concerns. But let me just ask you also about those labor leaders, because I read in the Post that included Shawn Fain from the UAW, as well as Sarah Nelson from the flight attendants. Is that correct?
Our reporting is that there were concerns raised, you know, yesterday. Biden had a private meeting with those labor leaders yesterday here in Washington, and there are concerns among those labor leaders and others about his electability and whether he can actually beat President Trump. And to the point made earlier about this meeting today with Biden campaign leadership and the Democratic senators, there's a real urgency from Democratic leaders to hear a specific plan of action from the Biden team to actually have them prove whether he can win, whether he can beat Trump, and how. People are looking for a game plan and so far are not convinced about that. That's according to my colleagues reporting.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.